Hey guys, it's Jake here with eTrailer. Today we've got my 2013 Ram 2500 and we're going to be taking a look at and I'm going to show you how to install the Front Runner Slimline 2 bed rack. Front Runner makes a lot of racks that will mount to the top of your vehicle that you can see up here on top of my truck. A lot of people don't like to permanently mount their racks to the roof because they just use it during the summer or for a few trips a year. That's when this bed rack's going to come in handy. You can mount the rails to the side rails of your truck, and then if you take the bolts out, you can slide this rack off and it's as if it was never there. The benefit of having this type of rack over top of your bed is so that if you ever run out of space when you're going on a long extended camping trip, or if you like to go overlanding, you can load your bed up with stuff pretty quickly. I know that personally from camping, so it's always good to have a lot of extra space. So this platform basically is going to double the size of your bed. The one thing that you will want to be careful with is obviously strapping things down. If you put stuff in your bed, usually you can leave it loose in there, but whenever you're putting stuff on top of this rack, they have lots of different tie-down point options that you can put on here and make sure that all your accessories on top are safely secured. There's some other options out there for truck beds for storage solutions or mounting accessories, and typically they're going to look like a load bar. So basically it's a roof rack or a ladder rack style that's just going to be mounted. Usually for a normal size truck bed like this, you'll just have two bars that you can mount a rooftop tent to, you can mount bike racks to, different things like that. You could also do that with a ladder rack. The problem with ladder racks is that typically the bars are very, very thick to be able to haul those heavy extended loads. And with a rack like this, you're going to not only get those two that you would get with the load bars, but you're going to get 9 different mounting locations in these tracks all across the top. The entire perimeter of this rack is going to have a track that'll accept an M8 bolt that goes in the side here. That's the same thing with these other tracks. And we've only got about half the amount of slats that can fit in this. So you can fit a slat in here, and here, and all the way down the rack. So you can make this a solid platform if you want to. What I like about having that option is that you can move the slats. So if I wanted to take like these 3 slats and move them forward into these 3 gaps, I can do that. And then I still have usability inside of this space to be able to reach down, haul extended loads, stuff like that. So if you ever need to go pick up a one-time thing from the store or something, you can take these bolts out, take the slats out, haul your extended loads, and then put your slats back in place. On a lot of overlanding rigs, you'll see that people will mount lights and other accessories to their rigs, but typically they're going to have to drill because the rack itself will use all the holes that the manufacturer has designed. If you decide to not go with any extra slats to go in between, you're still going to have all these pre-drilled holes perfectly spaced throughout the entire rack. So like if you wanted to mount a couple of lights on here so that you can see at your campsite, I plan to mount several different types of lights on this rack and on my roof rack, and those holes are going to come in really, really handy when I go to do that. The entire rack is going to be an aluminum construction. The uprights, the side rails, the top, everything's going to be aluminum, so you don't have to worry about rust later on in the future. Speaking of the side rails, this is where it's going to be essentially a T-track with nuts on the inside, and they're going to be track nuts. You can loosen the 6 bolts on each side, and this is what you're going to slide the rack out of. So if I don't ever want to use it, or if it's coming up in winter and I know I'm not going to be using it for a long time and I don't want it up here, I can loosen those 6 bolts on each side, drop my tailgate, and slide the whole thing out. You will have to remove these caps in order to do that, but this is a little bit extra safety measure so that your rack doesn't go missing. Front Runner makes a lot of really, really cool accessories. The thing I like about them is they went with one theme, in that the paint finish on the rack is going to match virtually all of their accessories. They've got containers that you can mount up here, bike racks, cargo carriers, stuff like that. You can mount all that stuff up here, and it's all going to match. And to me, that's really important, is so that your whole rig matches. But if you already have accessories at home, like a bike rack that you normally mount to a roof, it's the shape of a T on the inside, but it's going to accept an M8 bolt and not a T-track bolt. So if you have accessories that are T-track mountable, you may have to pick up some M8 bolts from your local hardware store and kind of check it out a little bit and see if it will be compatible with your bike rack that you already have. Depending on the length of your truck bed, or depending on the size of rack that you're wanting to build, you can see we have 3 uprights here on my truck bed because I have a 6.5 foot bed, or it's technically 6'4". This is a 63-inch long rack. So it's the standard rack, which is right here. That's the same size rack that's on my roof, but we have an extension here to make it a little bit longer. If you have a long bed truck, you will probably want to get an even longer rack, and with that you'll get another upright, so you have 4 uprights, and then this back section will be a little bit longer to take up more space in your truck. Now that we've gone over some of those cool details, let's go ahead and pull it inside and show you how to get it installed. To begin our installation, we're going to need to mark out where we need to drill our holes for our side rails. These rails are going to be installed on the side here. So what we do is we need to mark the center, but not the center of the whole bed here. What we need to do is from this point on the bed, right there, so the usable space. We need to mark that, the halfway point between that and then up here at the front of our bed. You want to basically feel back to where you can't use it anymore underneath. Measure side to side. I'm measuring 66 inches, so I've got to mark at 33 inches. We're going to use this as a reference point, and in your instructions it says they want you to measure from this point backwards and forwards 283 millimeters. I don't have a millimeter tape, so I've got a centimeter tape, and we'll just measure 28.3 or 3/10 centimeters. So I'll hold that there at 28 and mark out our spot here. On our rail, we're going to have 2 sets of holes towards the back, 2 sets of holes towards the front. Basically, we're going to use the 2 most inner holes. Those are going to line up with the 2 marks that we just put on here. We're going to line this up the best we can with the top of our bed rail, and then we need to mark out all 8 of these holes on the side of our bed rail. And we're going to take a 4mm drill bit, and we're going to work up to a 7mm drill bit. So we're going to drill these holes out first, all 8 of them, and then come back with a 7mm. We'll take our rail, put it on the end of our tailgate. We've got it upside down right now, but we need to peel all this adhesive, the backing off of it, and we're going to end up sticking this rubber seal to the back. And it's just going to make it so that we don't have this aluminum rail directly on the side of our truck bed, whether you have the plastic liner or not. So we're going to stick this to the back. It really just has to hold it temporarily. This stuff is not super sticky, but you can see here these 2 tracks in the side. That's where these 2 tracks are going to go. So just make sure, I found it's easier just to line up the one side, and then we'll come back and make sure the other side's tucked in. Any of our holes that are covered up by these rubber slats, they don't line up perfectly. We'll just take our knife, cut a straight line here, straight line here, and then just pop this little piece out. Now we're going to take our rail, we'll set it up, line it up with our holes. Then you're going to take your flathead bolts that come in your kit. They're going to slide right in. And you'll take your metal plates that come in your kit. We're going to line it up with each one of our bolts. And I wouldn't worry too much about the alignment of the top. When we go to tighten these down, we can do that later. Then you'll take a flat washer, slide it on the back, and follow that with a nylon lock nut. And we'll repeat this process until we get plates and nuts on the back side of each one of these 2 sets of holes. At this point, it's good to have an extra set of hands. We've got Joe helping us hold this rail up where we want it to be permanently mounted. I'm doing it to where this seal up here is right at the top of the bed, or just a little bit over. Then we're going to take a 10mm wrench and a 4mm Allen key and snug these up. We need to prep our uprights in order to slide them through our rails. We're going to take our button head bolts, put a lock washer, flat washer on it. And then what we can do is slide it through. You want to use these that are across from each other, not the vertical ones, because those are what's going to hold our rack in place. And we're just going to slide one of these nuts. It's sort of like a T-nut, but it's what's going to slide inside of our track. We're going to do this to each one of our uprights. Then you'll need to measure the total length of your rail, which is 63 inches. I just put a tiny little tick mark with a marker at 31.5 to find our center. And then we're going to want to measure, depending on what size rack you're putting on this, we're wanting to mount it to the second to last rails on our platform. So we need to measure 23 3/4 from the center this way, and then put a tick mark, and then 23 3/4 this way and put a tick mark. And essentially that will line us up right with the rails that we're wanting to mount this to. Then we're going to take these and slide them into our track. And we're just going to slide it to where the center of each of these brackets is going to be on our marks. We're not going to tighten those down because we want to make sure that these are going to line up with our rack first before we go and snug everything up. Whichever tracks you're planning on lining up with the rails that we just, or the uprights that we just put in place, you're going to take your M8 bolts, and you can see these little circle cutouts. They're the same ones underneath. We're going to slide those bolts into place. You can roughly just slide them to the end, and we'll want to put 2 of them in each of the tracks. So we did it on the second rail here, and then we're going to skip 2, do it on the center one, and then we'll skip 2 and do it on that end one. Now with an extra set of hands, you don't have to have this many people. These guys just happen to be around the shop. We're going to lift it up into place, and we're going to, as we set it down, try to line those bolts up the best we can. Once you get them all lined up, then we can just set it down in place. And you can make some minor adjustments later, but once we tighten everything up, it should lock everything into place. On each of these bolts, you want to put a flat washer and a lock nut. Once we get all our hardware in place, we're going to take our 5mm Allen key and a 13mm socket and snug up all of our hardware. You want to snug up these bolts first on the uprights down low. I will tell you, we ended up having to get some extra washers for the top. We swapped out the black ones for the silver ones. You just want to make sure that they're going to fit your M8 bolts. We put those washers up there and then took the thicker black washers, put them down here because the top nuts are going to get caps anyway, so it just covers it up. What we were having issues with is when we tightened down these bolts, they were bottoming out before they were tightening up flat against here. So advice from Front Runner is just to use extra washers wherever you may need them. And we'll want to take our end caps, slide those in place, and then take the tiny screws that come in your kit and sink those in. Once you get your end caps in place, that's going to do it for the installation. Well guys, hopefully this video helped you decide whether or not the Front Runner Slimline 2 bed rack is right for you and your 2013 Ram 2500.